We are the Antakaran, one of the peoples of Madagascar, the big island. Although we live near the water, Antakaran means from the rocky land, since we used to live inland. 150 years ago, the king of the people of the high plateau, the Marina, decided to extend their rice paddies all the way to the sea. Our ancestors had no choice but to retreat and take refuge in the north of Madagascar. Our clan settled in the Mitsio archipelago. The land is poor and dry, and growing things is difficult, and so we, the people of the land, became a people of the sea. For more than a century, we have fished off the coast, aboard our rowboats with sails and our balancing poles, as our ancestors did. In the village, they call me Ahmad the Diver. This is my father, Ahmad the Tall. My father is a traditional fisherman. A few years ago, some men came to our island to strike a bargain with us. If we brought them dinga-dinga, they would give us lots of money. I had to ask the advice of the village medium. Diving is dangerous, and my father was frightened for me. The medium consulted our ancestors. In exchange for their protection, at the end of each fishing season, my father must sacrifice an animal. And so I became a dinga-dinga fisherman. The dinga-dinga season only lasts a few months, 6 at the most. We must take advantage of this dry season, since as soon as the winds shift, we won't be able to go out to sea because of the strength of the countercurrents, the storms, and the hurricanes. Sailing off is carried out on a favorable site, which depends on the wind. The archipelago is vast, and our pirogues very small. Often we drop anchor near desert islands, with the 4 islands known as the 4 Brothers always in sight. Apnea diving is a recent activity and not part of our traditions. I learned it not very long ago. We began diving without a mask or a flipper. Now we are able to dive much deeper than in the past. In tropical oceans, there are 1,000 varieties of sea cucumbers. Some live hidden under the sand or in the deep openings of the coral reef. It's an animal that ingests the water and sand in order to digest microorganisms. It's exhausting work. Many consecutive dives are needed to find the cucumbers. Ahmad and his friend haven't spotted any in this area. Very often, members of the same species are found in the same spot, on some sand or sediment. Sea cucumbers, or holoturies, don't move very much. Those observed in aquariums have been known not to move for up to 2 years. But the animal's stationary nature doesn't make catching it any easier. You have to go very deep down to find it. Apart from man, it has no predator. This sea cucumber with tentacles doesn't interest Ahmad, since it is not edible. Of the thousands of varieties in the world, only a few dozen are interesting to merchants. Holotury in Greek means totally shameless. It seems that Aristotle gave them this name because of their phallic appearance. The oceans which bathe the Big Island are a crossroads of currents and reefs containing life rich in surprising shapes. In these waters, sea cucumbers can appear in stunningly rich colors. While fishing, the pirogue is not anchored, and one of the men, often worried, must stay on board and follow the divers. The area is teeming with cucumbers. On more than one occasion, Ahmad has gathered over 100 in one day. Some of the young men of the village have lost their lives since we began fishing this way. The biggest danger is staying underwater too long. Sometimes we don't find anything for hours, and then suddenly there are lots of them in the same spot. It's so tempting to dive for longer periods of time and gather up a maximum. We keep on gathering them, and suddenly we're gasping for breath. I almost died too. After looking for a long time, I found a place with lots of sea cucumbers. I began to gather them up, and the more I gathered, the more I wanted. I had 6 or 7 in my arms, but I was underwater too long. As I came up, I needed more air, and things began to look cloudy. I was lucky because I wasn't too far from the surface, and my friend helped me out of the water. Others, however, never came back. We mustn't overestimate our ability. We've learned the techniques of hunting and fishing from our parents, but apnea is something we began using only 10 years ago. There's another danger on the reefs. One of my friends went fishing with his father. At the end of the day, they hadn't caught anything. He dived under the pirogue because he saw lots of cucumbers. He gathered them and came back up. Then he went down a second time. He had no idea there would be any danger, and he was cut in half by a shark that bit him around the waist. Here in the Mozambique Canal, there are many black points, white points, as well as hammer sharks and tiger sharks, even though it's not very deep. Usually the sharks are fearful. They watch us from a distance. Sometimes, however, one of them suddenly appears from out of the blue and attacks, and there's no way of escaping it. The fishing season is over. The winds have shifted, announcing the arrival of the rainy season. To thank his ancestors for having protected his son, Ahmad the Tall sacrifices a buffalo. There are songs and dances for every occasion in life, for fishing, for the harvest, for birth and death. Most sacrifices and prayers take place at a sacred site, so as to be closer to the gods and to our ancestors. The medium pours honey and rum on the ground, invoking our ancestors, who we pray will protect us from the anger of the gods. The entire village will feast on the meat from the sacrifice until the end of the day, but not longer, since at nightfall, other evil spirits stalk the area. The last fish to be caught have to be prepared before the merchant comes. They must be transformed into Trepang. This Malayan word stands for the cucumbers when they are boiled and then dried and smoked. Once gathered, the cucumbers are opened and emptied of their digestive and respiratory systems. All that remains are tubular muscles and flesh, which are boiled to remove the salt. The cucumbers are then buried in humid beach sand for 24 hours. The fishermen prefer to spend the entire night near their precious merchandise. Twice already I have seen big fishing boats anchor here. They came from off the coast of the reef at the end of the day. There were 10 divers on board. They dived very often and for a long time and came back up with big sacks full. The next day, when they left, there were no cucumbers for kilometers around. If these boats come back too often, they will empty the sea of cucumbers. The next day, the cucumbers are dug up and rinsed in seawater. Preparing the trepang is very important. It conditions it so that it will be preserved during its long voyage to Asia. The cucumbers are cooked for more than an hour, then dried in the sun for several days to remove all humidity. Charles Valentine is a sea cucumber exporter. He buys the dinga-dinga from fishermen, sorts them and treats them if necessary before sending them to the Hong Kong market. The most precious varieties served in Asian restaurants are gathered together here.
As you can see, the girls here are grading. They are trying to separate the strong ones or the dry ones from the ones that still have moisture. As you can see, these ones are still pliable because they have some moisture in it. And the idea is to separate the one that has moisture from the dry ones, because then the dry ones will be repacked for export. The girls are now, what they're doing here is grading out the different species. And as you can see, there's mixed species there, and there's some big ones, some small ones of different species. So here we have a good example of one species, what we call surf red. This particular species is found on the reefs where you get the breakers or big waves breaking onto the reef. These species are known as amber fish. These fishes are very, very large in the water. And they have a lot of fat content in them. When I say fat content, they've got a lot of meat in them. And to process them is not very easy because they deteriorate very quickly. This is known as white teeth. Like I said, up till 18 months, 2 years ago, was the top of the range in all restaurants or all bistro buyers. To get them, you've got to dive. I believe in some countries you've got to dive quite deep, 30, 40, 50, even 80 feet of water to get these animals.
Since they are paid by weight, the fishermen don't dry their cucumbers completely, thus making them heavier. A second drying is therefore necessary to obtain a cucumber ready for export.
It's like stone, and unless we get it to this stage where it's very, very dry, we won't export until we get it to this stage. Okay, as you can see, they have filled it up. That is now 40 kilos. From there, that is taken down. Take it down. 40. As you can see, after the 40-kilo bags have been packed, weighed, packed, it is now stocked into the container, ready for exporting. That these bags are now ready for destined to go to Hong Kong for the Hong Kong market, and then send it out to other countries, go on to China. Some will go to the restaurants, some in Hong Kong, maybe other parts of the world.
Today, the chef is preparing a traditional recipe from the coastal province of Shandong, sea cucumber with chives. Before cooking it, the cucumber is soaked for a week to bring back its original shape and texture. Then it is cut into strips and fried. According to some, its high protein content, which can reach 50 to 60%, makes it a very valuable source of nourishment. For the Chinese, the sea cucumber is considered a very precious dish, like bird's nest soup or, unfortunately, bear palm. They are served for important occasions such as New Year's banquets and weddings. In addition, traditional Chinese medicine attributes other qualities to sea cucumbers. It is said to be capable of giving women softer skin and men more virility.